How many of you know about the Apache Indians, American Indian tribe? Anybody? How about the Comanches? You've heard about the Cherokees, Comanches, right? You've heard about Indian tribes. There are about 5,000 Indian tribes in America today. 5 different tribes, okay? What do you know about them? Like, where did they live? What were their rules or laws? Did they have medicine men like we that watched the Cowboys and Indian shows in our childhood? They were kind of like a mystery people, like that's for us Americans. But it can be said about any people group in the world. What do you know about them? How do they operate? Do they have kings? Do they have priests? Do they have prophets? And the Jewish people is something like that. Like, what do you know about the Jewish people and how they operated as a people? Well, we know a little bit because we read the New Testament, and Jesus was Jewish, and we know a little bit about their history. But actually, what do you know when you read the Bible? It's almost like we have a need to go like on a deeper level and find out about the way the society worked. And when something was wrong in the society, why did we know it was wrong? Because it was established on the basis of law. So if we go back in time and we learn about Israel and its history, then we have to really find out about a lot of things. So just write down on a piece of paper, where is it? Where is Israel? And we'll put here geography and topography. What is a mountain and a lake and a river and desert? Where east, west, Mediterranean, Dead Sea, Mount Hermon, the Valley of Megiddo. These are words that you could just read in the Bible all your life but not really know where they are or really what is the meaning or the history of that. So when we look at the Bible, it's almost like we have a great need to learn a lot. Let's just write down a few things about the society of Israel. We could put here. We have king. When was the first king, and who was the first king? Kings. Anybody know the first one? Saul, yeah. Why did they have a king? Was that God's original plan? No, but his original plan was what? The theocracy. God would be God. God would be the king. So you have Theo as God, this ending, theocracy, democracy, these way of governing wasn't through the people, but it was through God. But because they didn't, then they had a monarchy, and they had one king, and that his name was. But this was not the original plan. But the people wanted a king because they wanted to be like the other nations in the area. And then you have, David becomes king. He's the one that God chose, and then through his seed, you have kings. Another kind of person that was leading in the country was a priest. Priests were basically teachers. They represented God and the mind of God in the society. They would teach the law. Well, where do we have this in our Bible? Like what time in our history are we talking about? We have the cross, maybe going backwards before the cross. You have about 1500 BC, you have Moses giving the law. And he was also a prophet, Moses, in Deuteronomy 18. And through him, you have priests. And these are the men that are dedicated to God. They were a tribe. They were Levites. So when you see that word Levi, you have the whole idea of a priest, someone between God and the people. So you have kings, you have priests, and then you have another group of people. They were called prophets. The prophet had two functions. We could put here prophet, foretelling. That means predicting. They were predicting the future. They were foretelling, and the other one is forthtelling, teaching the Bible. The prophet could give a message for the people that was based on law, that the law says, like, you people are sinning. So who would tell the people that they were sinning? Well, the priests could tell the people, but if the priest didn't do a good job, then maybe the prophet. But if the prophet isn't doing a good job, then maybe the king. But if the king isn't doing a good job, then nobody is telling the people the mind of God, the heart of God. And that happened. Turn to Jeremiah 5 for one verse on that. There's many of them. What I'm trying to do, what I want to do is kind of introduce context. Because how can we understand the Bible unless we don't have like a context for what we're saying? Because we can read the Bible on the surface but not really understand it. Just like being with the Comanche Indians, a little bit different because they weren't civilized, but the Jews were civilized. But in the same sense, you could be with a group of people and understand some things, but not understand the real order of things, the way they were really set up. When something was wrong, how did they know that it was wrong? Yeah? So look at Jeremiah 5, verse 31. The prophets prophesy falsely, and the priests bear rule by their means. Prophets prophesy falsely. Priests are bearing rule, but it's really not from God. It's by their own. It's by them. They are governing, but it's all about them. And my people love to have it so. Look at verse 31. And what will we do in the end thereof? What will be the end result of this? Deceit and lying and this way of life. Now notice something in society. You have error. Okay, you have people. We can make a pyramid like this. We have leadership at the top. The leader is the king. And then you have the prophet, and you have the priest. They are more or less the ones that are making decisions and ruling the people. But if they're all wrong, like they don't have a message, they're not from God, they teach idolatry and fornication. These are two main, they kind of go together. Idolatry, the sin, often in our prophets that we're reading and studying in the next couple weeks, we have idolatry and we have sexual sin, fornication, and they go together because your desires, your appetites in life are connected with who you worship. And if you have a sexual appetite, then you could worship a sexual god that would say that this is fine, even practice this. This is good for you. And the people love to have it so. So they have a king who is an idolater, prophets that are false prophets, and priests that are doing it also. And this leads to a society that does not manifest God, the living God, but they have false gods. Anybody know the names of some of the false gods that we read in the Old Testament? Well, Baal, yes. Baal is a fertility god. Like that meant that if you worshiped him, you'll have more crops, more food, more children. You can have sex as you please. It's a fertility god. It was a god that very commonly was worshipped in the Old Testament. And Elijah was a prophet, but he wasn't a writing prophet. That's another point about this. I'll go back to this. You had Chemosh, you had Molech, you have Nebo. Ashtoreth was the queen of heaven, Ashtoreth. I won't write her name down. So you have pagan gods, and so when you are reading your Bible and you come across one of these words, you wonder, like, what does that mean, right? So I'm just trying to, like, generally lay a groundwork for what we're talking about, because we're going to move very quickly through the Bible. We've got to go from Isaiah to the book of Revelation this semester, which means that we have to do about in big clumps, of studies. So we're going to just hit parts so you're going to learn more. And by the time we finish, you'll have a good review of the Bible. Yeah, through this semester. Okay? All right. So we have geography, we have the society, and then we have this very important element in our study. We have our timeline, and we have really the Jewish people started back here about 2000 BC. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. It died. Doesn't work. Thank you. With Abraham. So Abraham was the first Jew. And why do we have the first Jew? Because God wants a nation for himself to reach the world. Where things are going is actually a kingdom is coming on the earth. But he needed a people in order to bring that kingdom into the world. He doesn't do it through an individual, he does it through a nation. Many people, like a sequence, many, many people. So we'll draw that sketch in a second here. I wonder why that happened. I touched something maybe. Have you ever touched something and the whole thing just exploded? You just hand your phone to somebody and it, okay. All right, so we have 2000 BC, Abraham. That's important to know. They go down into Egypt. They multiply in huge number. They come out. They're at Sinai. And Moses gives the basically the civil operation of the society, and it's rooted in a promise to Abraham in Genesis 12:3. If you bless Abraham and his seed, you will be blessed. If you bless Abraham, it's like a universal blessing, a universal rule of life. Like, don't go against the Jewish people. But the devil does, and the devil has nations that are anti-Semitic and people groups and so on. But we learned something about this Tower of Babel. Remember, here's the tower, here's the world. There's a Tower of Babel, one language. And then he's saying all of them, all of the nations, all of the language groups, and there's about 70 of them at the Tower of Babel. And that none of them, I'm going to do something new. I'm going to take one man, and from him, I'm going to build a nation. I'm going to give him a land. So there's this land and son. Two things. I'm going to give Abraham land that he didn't get from the Tower of Babel. Like, that didn't happen. That's some hundreds of years before Abraham. Yeah, something I'm pretty, a little bit. It's about, well, okay, I won't say hundreds of years. Okay, so the timing I don't know, but Abraham is in the Ur of the Chaldees, and he's called, and he has a function. Hundreds of years later, when they come out of Egypt, Moses has the 5 books of Moses with the law. So we have land and son. His son is Isaac. Land is the promised land that he never really legally owned. He only had it by promise. He didn't own any property in the promised land. Abraham did not own only a cave to bury his wife. That was all that he owned when he died. Well, then how did he have the land? It was by promise from God. But he didn't legally own it, and they didn't actually until when they came out of Egypt and they go up and possess it, then they inhabit it, they take it over, and they drive out the people. Okay, so here I'll write down a couple of things. Number one, the Jews had a priesthood. They learned about redemption, bloodshed. They learned about serving God. They learned about holiness. They were unique people. The other nations didn't have this. The Jews did. Okay, other nations had gods and service and human sacrifice. That's what Chemosh and Molech, they were both gods that wanted human beings. They wanted babies to be slaughtered and sacrificed to them. But the Jews are no. You can't, no. That's not God. That's not me. That's not my mind. All right, so he set up a priesthood. Number 2, a tabernacle. That's a tent that became a temple, that you actually had built a permanent temple but had a movable tabernacle. Okay, they had the sacrifices. They had law. Let's put here law. We have the civil law. Anybody know what, like, an example of a Mosaic civil law? Treating your neighbor as yourself. That's a fundamental law. But the civil law had to do with how they treated each other in specifics. If you have a house, one of them is if you have a house and you don't put a rail around the top of the house and somebody falls off, then you're liable for that. If your ox gores somebody, you have to kill the ox. And if you are aware of the fact that the ox could gore somebody, and it does, then you're liable for that. You're held responsible. This is where our laws in our Western world are derived from the Mosaic law, the civil law. So you have civil law, you have moral law, like it's not lying, cheating, stealing, adultery. You have moral law, and then you had religious law. And that would be like if you can't go into the Holy of Holies without blood. You can't be a priest unless you're called of the tribe of Levi and you have blood put on your ear, the tip of your right ear, and your thumb and your big toe. Then you can function, you're sanctified as a priest. So these are religious laws. Why am I saying all this? Because you can't understand what the prophets are saying unless you understand context. You don't understand why the Comanche Indians would mutilate a dead body. Do you know why they scalped people? Why they shot them full of arrows? Because they believed that the spirit of the man that was just killed will leave the body in the condition of the body. If you mutilate the body, then you are hurting the spirit, and the spirit loses its power. That's why they behaved the way they did in that instance. I'm just saying that the Jewish people, it's a whole culture that you have to learn in order to understand the prophets and what they're saying and why are they saying it. Okay? Another thing about the law of Moses was it was all based on blessing by obedience. And if you disobeyed, you are cursed if you disobey. Where is this written? Yeah, 28 to 32. I set before you blessing and cursing. If you will obey me, then I will bless you. If you disobey me, then you will be cursed. Okay? So, it's severe. It's serious. But it also showed that the Jewish people, because they disobeyed and they had a habit of it, that it also raises the question, was there ever a time when there was a revival in Israel? Was there ever a time when people were like on fire for God and obeying God and wanting God? Was there ever a time? And there was. There were like many of them. There were many revivals. There were many times when they turned to God and they found grace, they found love, they found blessing, and they were obedient and interested and hungry to hear about God and know about God. And when a prophet came and he was of God and he gave a message, and if it was received, and when you say, when he's, let's take Isaiah for example. Let me make a very important point that Andrew made here on the timeline. In the history of our Bible, we have a very fundamental principle regarding the nation of Israel, because you have what's called cycles of discipline. cycles of discipline. And this means if you disobey, there's like one effect, and this is like the first cycle. Like one effect, bad weather. Another effect, the economy. Another effect, war with a neighboring nation. And the breaking down of society. Neighbor going against neighbor. Adultery being rampant in the community. Like families being broken up. Idolatry, betrayal, lack of trust. Like cycles of discipline. And we generally in our ministry, I think you can number them and label them in different ways. Uh-oh, it happened again. You can label it in different ways, but in this whiteboard here, I don't want to go too fast. Okay. I got to learn how to do what you just did. Okay, I'll put here 5 cycles of discipline. When the Jewish people were really in a very bad place in their sinful living, and God would send a prophet, but there were times when they didn't receive the prophet. And when I say that, I'm saying the king doesn't receive him. Jeremiah's prophecy, the king cut the scroll, he cut the scroll, slicing it and putting it in the fire. In Jeremiah, perhaps it's chapter 36. And Jeremiah is put in prison. So the king doesn't receive it. Other prophets, the false prophets, don't receive it. And also the priests. So what is God going to do? What will happen to the nation? According to Deuteronomy 28 to 32. What's that? Anybody know? He's going to send a foreign nation to invade, to come into the country. And that foreign nation is going to take over the people and deport them. They're going to be taken and herded together and marched out of the country, and they're going to lose their homes. They're going to lose everything they own. They're going to lose family members in the deportation. And this happened 2 times in Israel's history. The country was divided by a civil war. That's another cycle of discipline, civil war, which happened in our country in the 19th century. We split. There was civil war, states against states. In Israel, there was civil war with tribes against tribes. And this is because they were not following God. They didn't have revival. You see this in the book of Judges. Okay. In the book of Judges, you see the tribe of Benjamin at war with Ephraim, and so on. You see jealousy with the tribes. Ephraim and Judah are jealous. And you see real problems that happen in society because of sin. This is essentially the message. And the prophets are coming to tell the people, and they should be received and respected. But if I have another mind and I am idolatrous and I hate them, I might kill them or be part of killing a prophet. And that happened. Okay? It's amazing. And Jesus came to Israel and he had a message for Israel that they needed, but they didn't have that capacity for it. So the Lord sent John the Baptist before he came to bring a revival and stir people's hearts toward God. And he did, and he succeeded. It was short, a year and a half, but it was enough to launch Christ into his public ministry and for people to receive it. They were prepared. There were times in our Bible where we are looking for what is going on. What is the prophet saying and how is it being received? And when the nation is saying, and usually it came through the king, and the king would say, that get out of here. You get out of here. You know where that happened? That happened with Amos. They say, you get out of here. And Amos said, I'm not a professional prophet. Like a professional prophet. I'm a farmer. I'm a farmer of sycamore trees. I'm not doing this because this is my job. I'm doing it because God has given me a message in my heart for you. But they rejected him. So what did Amos say? That's where we read in the book of Amos. We want to know, what did he say and what was the context? Okay. Now, another thing, in our history, we have this severe discipline is deportation. Does anybody know about deportation in history? Deportation. Where has it happened and who has done it? Anybody know? Any example? What? When a government has the authority over a territory, can round up those people and move them to another place, that's deportation. We did it with the Cherokee Indians. We did it with the Indians. We've done it with the Indians in North America and South America. Argentina, they drove Indians out of Argentina. The Europeans did. We did it here with Indians also, North American Indians. And it's a sad story, actually. 1860s, 1870s, 1880s. And it's sad. The Soviets did it. Stalin did it in the Soviet Union. He moved people, Tatars, Uzbeks. He moved Russians, Germans, moved them around in the Soviet Union. Why? Why did he do that? Because you control the territory better if you remove people. And then if you move people that don't belong there, move them from to repopulate it with other people. And I know I've read that Hitler planned to do it with Polish people, moving them to Holland, and Dutch people moving them to Poland. And so what is the name of the nation that moved the Jews out of Israel in the north? Okay, this is it on his, where do we have, Andrew, do you want to, we don't have it there, right? Okay. So we have that nation. Very powerful country and king. Assyria, they're located in the north. So again, our geography. So we have Israel is like this. There's the Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea. Up here in the north, we have what was called the Assyrian Empire. very ruthless, very powerful for a designated period of time. Israel had divided. Southern part of the country was called Judah, after the name of the tribe that David was from, and Solomon. During the time of David and Solomon, the country is united. It was like a golden age. Like Solomon was wise, very wealthy, and very powerful, and very big territory, big. But Israel has never been as big as it's going to be in the millennium. Another point that you should know about, very simply, here we have the world, and we have many countries in the world, many territories around the world, maybe 220, probably more. And then we have one is Israel, right? What's the point of that one? World government, world authority from God and the king, and there'll be a period of time where we have 1,000 years of peace on the earth, and it will come from here. And it's called my holy mountain. All the nations will flow unto it, and David will be the king. And there will be peace. Men will not make war anymore. That day is coming. It's amazing. That's a reality. But now we don't see it. We are in 2025, right? We wonder, when will the kingdom come on the earth? On the earth. The kingdom will come on the earth. And what will be the basis of that kingdom but the Messiah and the kingdom that he brings? And we see Christ coming the first time, and then we see in the book of Isaiah the Christ that came the first time as the suffering Christ, but we also see the millennial kingdom at the end of the book of Isaiah, of chapter 65, chapter 66. We see the kingdom coming on the earth. So we're very fascinated with two things in our Old Testament. One is the first coming, and then the second coming, and the kingdom coming on the earth. But until then, we see the world as we see it and study it in the scripture and understand that God is serious about it, that it's reality, that the kingdom of God is even here now with us, Luke 17, verse 21, that the kingdom of God is here. If I by my finger cast out demons, then no doubt the kingdom of God is come nigh unto you. Amen. Yes, Lord. Yes. So, what will happen after the 1,000 years? Anybody know? After the 1,000 years. The heavens will explode with a great noise. The fire will burn up the universe, the whole thing. Heaven and earth will flee away. There'll be a white throne judgment. And then the new heaven and the new earth, called the eternal age. And there'll be a new order of things based on the form that now exists, life as we know it, because we live here and understand this world this way. But there will be a world which will be without the physical properties of the world that we know. It'll become eternal and never age. There'll not be entropy like we know about and the laws of physics as we know. It'll be a transformed world, and it will be forever, Ephesians 2 and verse 10. That's coming. Okay, that's a lot of material. And we haven't started Isaiah yet, but we will. So let's go now to the book of Isaiah. Praise the Lord. Yes. So when we look at these prophets, there are 16 writing. They have written prophets that wrote books. 12 of them are minor. It doesn't mean that their work is inferior to the 4 major prophets. It just means that they are minor in the volume. They have only written 4 chapters, 3 chapters, 1 chapter like Obadiah, and then the major prophets, they've written a lot of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Daniel, Ezekiel, and Lamentations is kind of connected with Jeremiah's Lamentations, so it's Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. There are 5 I mentioned, but one of them is two of the books are from Jeremiah, and they are amazing. Isaiah is the poet, and he's the one. The literary form is incredible. A lot of his writings are very poetical. They are fascinating, and they are a lot of them about Jesus Christ. Isaiah is a prophet that writes about Jesus Christ, perhaps the most. And if you have a Thompson Chain Bible, and I advise you to use a reference Bible. You don't need to use Thompson Chain, but there's a lot of material in the back of it that you can use to study the books. And there is one piece here about Jesus as the Messiah in the book of Isaiah. I wonder if I can find it here. Yeah, there it is. Portraits of Christ from Isaiah. And Isaiah gives him titles: Emmanuel, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, Mighty Traveler, Anointed Preacher, Arm of the Lord. The characteristics of the Messiah: saving power, greatness, sinlessness, vicarious suffering, meekness, compassion, radiance, perseverance, gentleness, silence, righteousness. So when we read Isaiah, we're looking for the characterization of the Messiah. So let's go look at the book here. Just by memory, I can just share it with you. If you go to Isaiah, and we have, would you talk to each other for a minute? I need to hear you talking. Talk to each other for a minute and say, this is a good class. And I love Pastor Schaller very much. And I think I love you too. Okay, turn to Isaiah chapter 1. Do you see chapter 1, verse 1? The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah. Now, we got a number of words there. Judah. Why does he say Judah and Jerusalem? You need to know what is Judah? What territory is that on the map? Okay. Jerusalem is a city, and then the kings that he mentions are the kings of the south. Now, this is important in our history lesson. You have the north and the south, and the barrier, the division is somewhere there. Okay, this is when the kingdom split, and these kings in the north they're all bad, basically. They're all bad kings. There's about 19 of them. They're all bad kings. Like Ahab is one of them, well known, Jezebel, his wife. And who were they, and what did they do, and where did the split come from? Why did they split? And then in Judah, in the south, is basically more orthodox and more desirous to follow God. Judah is a better place to be. If you were worshiping God, like the woman at the well in John 4, she said, "You are Jewish. You say we should worship in Jerusalem, but we worship on this mountain." Well, what does that mean? Well, there was Samaria. There was a place where they worshipped the calf god, the cow god, the calf. You remember the golden calf of Exodus 32? Well, this was in paganism. And by the way, it continues today, like in India, where they respect the cow. And, this is like connected with the idolatry. Okay, but this was wiped out, like eventually in time from Egypt. It wasn't Egypt. All the way through that part of the world, all the way through to India. Okay? So the Jews are adopting this in two places in the country, one in the south and one in the north here. Okay? Up here. I don't have the right place there, but in the north, near Dan, where the tribe of Dan is. Another thing you need to know, like in your study, is the different tribes and the names of the tribes. And where did they live? Where were they located? Where was Ephraim? Where was Benjamin? That's a separate subject. All of this is a lot of information that's kind of packed in. And maybe the point of it is just for you to be exposed to it a little bit and realize that I need to study the context of what I'm reading and understand the message. Okay, so we have kings in the south. Now look at verse 1. It says Uzziah, and this is the name of the king Uzziah. In 2 Chronicles, we can look it up. What was his son's name? Jotham. You can look up him. Next king, Ahaz, bad king. Next king, Hezekiah, good king. So in the south, there were kings. There were also something like 19 kings. Yeah, a little bit like sometimes the son and the father ruled together. It takes some explaining, but don't worry about it. The principle is there were only about 6 of these kings were good kings in the south. Many times kings are bad. And sometimes actually the king started well but ended bad. That's like Asa. He started well but ended bad. Some kings started bad and ended well. That was like Manasseh. But some kings, very few, started well and ended well. So my desire is for you as a Christian that you start well and end well. Okay? I want that for you in your life because you can do it. You can start well as a Christian and end well as a Christian. and walk with God your whole life like Billy Graham did. And you and I can do that by the grace of God. Okay? So what did Isaiah say here? Well, he talked about how bad the nation is. And you see that here in verse 2. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord has spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. The ox knows his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel does not know, my people do not consider. And then there's the verses, that explain your whole head is sick, verse 5, and the whole heart faint. Okay? He is speaking to the whole country. He has a focus on the north. They have departed, and he is saying that you have rebelled. But if you would be willing and obedient, look at chapter 1 and verse 18 and 19. Come now, let us reason together. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. If you be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. Okay. Now, flip through the pages. All of this text, we could take parts of it and preach on it. Every part of it is like, there's many messages here. One that you hear a lot is chapter 6 with his calling. And, who will go? It's what do we have? Lo, let's see, who will go? Woe is verse 5. Woe is me. Lo, I am undone. And then who will go? I will go. That's a short outline for chapter 6. Woe is me, I am a sinner. Isaiah says, I have sinned. Then we have lo, this fire has touched my lips, verse 7. And then God says, who will go? And he says, I will go. He has an encounter with God as a prophet, and that was in the year that King Uzziah had died. In verse 1. I'm going to just break it down a little more here. We have the year is about we have between 740 prophesied and 680 in our timeline under these 4 kings. It's a long time. And by the way, it looks like the rabbis and the history is that Isaiah was arrested, deported, taken down to Egypt, and they put him in a hollow log and sawed it in half, cutting him in half. He was sawn asunder. In Hebrews chapter 11, that reference is there. Why did they murder him and kill him? Because he was a prophet of God. And he said these things. The good news is that 66 chapters are recorded for us of messages, poems, messages, history, and that's the content for the Messiah, the essential elements that are in Isaiah. Now, look at Isaiah chapter 13 to chapter 19. I'm going to give you a break in a minute. But look at chapter 13. The burden of Babylon, verse 1. Go to 15. The burden of Moab. Chapter 17. The burden of Damascus. What does that mean? The burden of Moab, burden of. Look at chapter 19, verse 1. The burden of Egypt. It's a spiritual burden for the territory. Look at our map here. We have the nation of Israel, and where is Moab? Here's Moab down here. Damascus is up here. Where's Egypt? Egypt is over here. What is he prophesying about? Countries on the outside of Israel. What is he saying to them? He's saying basically, you're proud. You're proud. That's the main thing. God has an issue with you. The nations immediately around Israel is really, Satan is actually referred to in chapter 14 of Isaiah, and he is a spirit that is proud. He's Lucifer, an angel that has fallen to the earth because of pride. And he's now in the king. He is in Babylon. He is proud. And by the way, for every country, including ours in the United States, and today is the inauguration of Donald Trump as the president, and we appreciate it and thankful for that very much. But behind all of it is, in any power, behind it all is a need for humility. That's the humility. God gives grace to the humble. So we are a proud nation, but we shouldn't be so proud that we think so highly that we have done all of these things or that we are this way and so on. It's a problem in nationalism that the nationalism can become proud in the wrong way. And this Isaiah 14 is like a background story for that, isn't it? Oh, let's see, where are we? Yes, verse 12, Isaiah 14:12. Incredible insight into the spirit that's behind this Babylonian empire. Because Nebuchadnezzar is a very proud leader. You read about him in the book of Daniel, but God humbled him in Daniel chapter 4. Okay? I hope I'm not talking like too much over. You're following. It's simple, isn't it? It's not difficult, but there's a lot there. But if just to provoke you to study it and to like learn it and realize I have a lot to learn, but it's fun. Because when this kind of makes sense that Isaiah is prophesying, the king is here in Jerusalem, but Isaiah is talking about the countries around him. Tyre is another one. That's in Ezekiel 28. Tyre is up here. Okay. So Okay, so when we come to chapter 24, we have a little insight into the millennial reign. Isaiah 24 to 27. In these chapters, I'll give you an assignment. Read these chapters 24 to 27. Read it a few times. You don't have to learn a lot about Isaiah. You will learn Isaiah in your whole Christian life. Isaiah 40, 44, is there a God like me in heaven? I know not any, God says in Isaiah 44. It's like one of my favorite thoughts. I like it. Let's look at that. 44 verse 8. Fear you not, neither be afraid. Have not I told thee from that time and have declared it? You are even my witnesses. Is there a God beside me? Is there a God beside me? Is there somebody else? Yea, there is no God, I know not any. They make graven images. Are all of them vanity? They're all detestable things. They're all like dust. They're dirt. They're ashes. I don't know that there's a lie in my right hand. Like he takes ashes and turns them into beauty for ashes. The Messiah, the living God, this is a thing that Isaiah is saying, crying out like this. Now, some of you might say, how could a nation that knows God turn to idolatry? And the answer is because of my sin nature. It's that simple. So Isaiah is turning them, like giving messages to turn them. So 24 to 27 is a key portion of Isaiah because it's a little insight into the millennium, the 1,000-year kingdom on earth, what the Lord will do. And there's the curses are mentioned on a sinful lifestyle, a sinful way, hooking up with Assyria or Egypt. Look at chapter 30. I want to give you a break, but I can't stop here for a minute. Here, I will, but look at Isaiah 30. Verse 2. That walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked of my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Look at this map here. Do you think that the king is going to go down to Egypt and make a covenant with Egypt so that militarily they'll be protected by Egypt? Answer, yes, they will. And the Lord is saying, they're not asking me from my mouth. They're not asking me from my mouth what I think about that. That's Isaiah 30, verse 2. Verse 1. Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, that cover with the covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin, that walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh. What's that? Military strength, maybe money strength, economy strength, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Yeah? Do you see? He's got some teeth in his message. You have some weight in what he's saying. And what Israel needs is the Messiah. They need God to be their God. Yeah. And that's what he's going to bring in chapter 40. From chapter 40 through to 66, it's basically 27 chapters. How many books in the New Testament? Anybody know? How many books are in the New Testament? Yeah. 27 chapters in the New Testament. How many chapters in the Old Testament? 39. It's the same length as the book of Isaiah. Isaiah is like a little Bible in the middle of the Bible, where 39 chapters are about Israel's sin, about judgment on the nations, and then 27 chapters about the Messiah and the coming kingdom. Not so much about more about the Messiah and the coming kingdom. It's kind of like these chapters are like an Isaiah New Testament, and it actually starts the same way as the New Testament starts. Look at chapter 40 and verse 1. You recognize it right away. Verse 3, Isaiah 40, verse 3. The voice of him that cries in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Where did you hear that before? Where is that coming from? Where do you read that? John the Baptist. He said the same thing. The New Testament starts with those words, and Isaiah's 27 ending chapter starts with those words. They're about to prepare the way of the Lord. Turn to God, because the Messiah is coming. Okay? All right. Flip to the end. I know I'm going to. Okay, go to Isaiah 66 and see at the very end. It's kind of like the end of our Bible, the white throne judgment. And it's here, verse 22. And as for the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me. Your seed and your name remain. It shall come to pass. From one new moon to another, from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me. And they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me, for their worms shall not die. This is hell. Neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be abhorring unto all flesh. The end of Isaiah is about the new heaven and the new earth, and also about the judgment on people at the white throne judgment and hell. Their worm does not die, and the fire is not quenched. So the book of Isaiah is like a mini Bible in the middle of our Bible, and the first 39 chapters about the problems with people, problems with nations, and pride. But there's a kingdom coming. There's a Messiah coming and a better world coming. Okay? So take a break for a few minutes and come back. We'll do the next book. I don't want this to come across too much. There's too much material, but you get it little by little, right? The Isaiah, this book is interesting. This is like a deeper Walter Kaiser, if you want a reference for the prophets and how he writes. He's very good, I think. So that's a reference if you want. You don't need to do it. Do we love each other? What do you think? We do, but we're not talking about it. Okay. All right. So Andrew is helping me a lot during this semester. So he can share at the end a few minutes, whatever's on your. Is that good? On whatever you want to say to the class. All right, so now we are going to, the next part is, did you read Isaiah 24? Not yet, right? Let's do it as a class. 24, Isaiah 24. No, I don't think we have time. So I'm asking you to read it 24, 26, 27. Okay? All right. Is that good? All right. Now let's go to Hosea. Now, why wouldn't we go to Jeremiah? Andrew, why wouldn't we go to Jeremiah? Why do we go from, how come the books are put in this order and we're using a different order?
Okay, so the way we're following it is the chronological order of what dates the books were written at. So the whole timeline is divided into three parts. Okay, so there's pre-exile, there's in exile, and post-exile. So all the prophets that spoke to this nation, right? The north, which is the north? Yeah. No, what is it called? Does anyone know? Northern Kingdom. Israel. Okay. And the southern kingdom? Judah. Okay. So these prophets talked to both of these parts in a time period. So in 586 BC, Judah falls and they go all taken into exile to Babylon, right? And the prophets that talk to the people of Judah in exile in Babylon are called the exile prophets, right? Right now we're talking about the pre-exile prophets, and their job is to warn the people of Judah that if you continue, like Pastor Shala said, if you continue living in your sin, if you continue to not repent, you will go into exile. So according to this timeline, the prophets that are pre-exile are Jonah, Amos, Hosea, Isaiah, and there are a few more. So that's why.
Okay. What does exile mean? What's pre-exile? What's exile mean? What? Yeah, getting kicked out. You go into exile. You're pulled out of your country and you are sent away. Napoleon Bonaparte was put in exile. You can do it to individuals. You could do it in groups. You can put the Jewish people out of the country. They were pulled. When was the last time they went into exile? In the time of Jesus Christ, he said, within this generation, these stones of this building will be taken down, not one stone upon another. And the women that are pregnant are going to be in a very bad situation. You cry not for me, but for yourselves and your children, because the bad times are coming. What was he talking about? The Roman Empire was going to crush the Jewish nation and make it a law that you could not even be in this country. Look up at the map. There's the Romans take all the Jews are gone. In the year 122 AD, it was illegal to be a Jew and in the country. They went into exile. How long were they in exile? When did they come back and form a new country? 1948. Why 48? What happened in 1942 to 1945? What happened in Europe? The Holocaust. Actually before 42, but the camps were constructed and they were Why? What did Hitler do? What did Hitler want to do? He wanted to exterminate all Jews in Europe and all over the world. That's what his plan was, to destroy them all. But it backfired in a way. Why? The surviving Jews wanted their own country. So they went back. They had been going back in the late 1800s. They were moving back. God was bringing them back. Like the prophet said, he would bring them back. They would go back like birds. They would fly back to Israel. And they came in on airplanes. They came by boat. They came by walking. I met a Jewish guy one time. He walked from Turkmenistan. He was 6 years old, a little boy. He walked. It took 4 years. But they walked from Turkmenistan, the Middle East. They walked 4 years working as a Jewish family to get back home or get to Israel. This was a miracle. This is the Zionist movement. It really happened. It's the prophet said it. Okay, my point is, they were in exile by the Assyrians in the beginning here. And the prophets the prophets like said it would be happening, happened in 720 or 722. They are brought away. Only the north part were taken into captivity. Right? Do you know what I mean by north part? This is the nation. It's divided. The north is called Israel. The Assyrians came. They came down and they took over. Now, by the way, the same king came to Jerusalem and he said, we're going to take you guys. My words, we're going to eat you for lunch. We're going to take you out. And who was the king in Jerusalem at the time? Isaiah 39, 38, no. We have 38, 39. Who was a king at the time in Jerusalem? Hezekiah. Hezekiah turned to God. Hezekiah humbled himself. And in one night, was it 185,000 soldiers died around Jerusalem. God protected. God answered. So this was 120 years later. The Babylonians came and took over Judah and burned the temple, and they went into Babylonian captivity. So it was 2 deportations. The first one, like 720 AD, and the second one is like 606 AD. Okay? That's a little bit of the history. But I don't want you to get bogged down into these things. But you might say, what does that have to do with my life? Like, if it's from the Spirit, take it. And the Spirit is saying something to you, because it'll come together. And you'll kind of understand context. Now, these prophets are prophesying largely to the north. And this is another part of the story. And I just pray that what we are teaching could be imparted to you in a way where it would help you and you become interested in reading about it. Because it is cool the way they wrote. Okay, so we'll go now to Hosea, the prophet Hosea. In a word, turn there with me and see. So Jeremiah is for later in our history, but the way the Bible's put together is this way. So, but Hosea and Isaiah are contemporaries, and they're saying similar things. But the Lord is very upset with the nation of Israel, and he calls Israel his wife, and that God is the husband. You will not anymore call me Baali, but call me Ishi. You'll not call me master, but you'll call me father or husband. All right, Hosea 2:20. I'll betroth thee unto me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. Go to Hosea 1:1. Word of the Lord that came unto Hosea the son of Beri in the days of Isaiah, the same kings, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, kings of Judah, the days of Jeroboam the son of Joash, king of Israel. So we have this picture like this. This is Jerusalem. So we are in the north. The kings he mentions are in the south, but the king in the north is Jeroboam, and he's the Jeroboam number 2. And the country is rich. The country has luxury. It's developed. It has a lot of money. They are also drinking a lot of wine. Kings are drunk. There is prosperity. There is hope, and they're trusting in the neighbors. And they make deals with the neighboring countries, and they have forgotten God. And the Lord is saying, Israel, you are my wife, but you are an adulteress, adultery. So the Lord said to the prophet, go marry a harlot. Look at chapter 1. Verse 2, the beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea, and the Lord said to Hosea, go take unto thee a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the Lord has committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bare him a son. And the Lord said unto him, call his name Jezreel, for yet a little while I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. And it shall come to pass at that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Now, what is he saying? Basically, that this wicked country that's become a wicked country is a place where he says a number of things that are like graphic. Cake half turned, you are a silly dove, you have joined yourself to idols, you are in a lot of trouble. Like, this is 14 chapters, and the end of it, chapter 14, is like so beautiful, because even though he's very upset about the nation, he comes back with like hope, and that he loves them. He loves Israel. So he actually says this about Hosea. He says, go marry a prostitute. So number one, you marry an unfaithful woman, okay? Unfaithful woman. And she decides after marriage to leave him and go be married to be joined to another person by being a slave. She becomes a slave. We don't know exactly how that worked. But here's the key. She has children with other men, and she's unfaithful and not loyal. And here's the king. God said to Hosea, go and buy her from slavery. Like you are to go and pay money to get your wife back and buy her out of slavery. That is an expression of mercy and forgiveness. And why did he do that? Because he wanted Hosea the prophet to be an example of who God is. That even though I lost my wife, but the beginning wasn't good. I married a prostitute. So what do I expect from her? The beginning is not good, but I expect her to be loyal. But then she's not. But then he says, he comes back and he goes, I will buy you back out of slavery. I will pay a price for you. I want you back to be my wife. You know, that's like a very big part of the story here in Hosea, you know, about unconditional love and favor. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to chapters 4 to 13 of Hosea. Chapters 4 to 13. These chapters are descriptions of backsliding. Descriptions of backsliding. And idolatry. So, what is backsliding? Turning away from God. Yeah. Has anybody here ever backslid? Wait a minute. Could you all stand up? No, have you? No, don't. No, let me see that again. It ministers to me. How many of you have backslided? I mean, all right, I mean seriously. Like we've all, like really? Marshall, I'm shocked. I had no idea. I've got to share that with my friends. Did you know that Marshall? Yeah, that's shocking. All right. Do you guys, the Polish brothers, you want to say anything about it? Give a testimony? Okay, where do we find that in Hosea? Turn to the end of chapter 4. Verse 16. Israel slides back as a backsliding heifer. Now, when I've studied it, and you know, I'm trying to figure out like where's it coming from, and what is it? You know, it's kind of like you have an animal, and it goes back into like a narrow spot. Like sometimes, you know, trying to get a cow up on a truck, and you can't get it, you know, it doesn't go well, you know, and it slides back or it moves back, and it's now in a tight spot. This is the idea of this picture. The backsliding heifer is in a tight spot. A tight spot. And Israel is like that. And it happens to people. Like all of us, we can make bad decisions, and then we can say, how did I get here? What happened? How did I get connected with this woman? that's messing up my life. Like, I can't believe it. Like, this is not a good. There's a proverb that says a harlot is like a deep pit, a narrow pit. A woman, okay, what is that? A woman, like how could, and a man that doesn't please God finds himself with her, like that's a problem. I could backslide and get myself into a problem with finances, relationships, those kind of things, okay? But then look at the next part of the verse. It says, now the Lord will feed them as a lamb in a large place. The opposite. You find a large place and we're being fed. And we're a lamb, like not stubborn, but we can be led. A heifer can step on your foot and not let you go. Like a heifer, a big animal, a cow, But I will feed you like a lamb in a large place is the opposite of backsliding. It's like growth and guidance and peace. So we have these little pieces in the book of Hosea texts, and I'll give you the list of them here. We have the Valley of Achor, is chapter 7, verses 24 to 26. There's a valley of hope. Ephraim has joined herself to idols. Leave her alone. Israel is mixed with other people, not a separate identity. A cake, half baked or half turned, like she's not cooked through and through, like Israel hasn't made it to be who I called her to be, like a place of prosperity and blessing and godliness and spiritual revival. Strangers have devoured your strength, chapter 7, verse 9. Could we stop there for a minute? Strangers have devoured your strength. Could you turn to your neighbor and explain to them what you think that means? Strangers have devoured your strength. How about this one? Gray hairs. Like I have gray hair, but I didn't know I had gray hair. But then somebody said, hey, you have got gray hair, and I have a lot of it now. Well, hey, you got gray hair. I didn't know that. That's like Israel. Like she doesn't know how wrong she is. She's joined to idols. She's got gray hair. What? I got gray hair? Yeah, you got gray hair. Even some of the young ladies over here, you don't know. Nobody's told you yet, but you have gray hair. Okay, that's Hosea 7:9. And then, let's see, 8:8. Turn there with me. I got to finish. Hosea 8:8. Israel is swallowed up. Now shall they be among the Gentiles as a vessel wherein is no pleasure. Why? Because she's going into captivity, where she'll be mixed with Assyrians. By the way, the lost tribes of Israel. Has anybody ever heard of that before? Lost tribes of Israel. Who are they? Lost tribes of Israel. Where is it coming from? It's coming from this. When they go into captivity, they're gone and they never come back. And they're assimilated in European culture, Middle Eastern. They are lost. They are in maybe the wise men that came to worship Jesus, the Magi, maybe they were from the lost tribes of Israel. And by the way, the Mormons believe the North American Indians are part of the lost tribe of Israel. And we had a mayor in New York City, Mayor Koch, he said that Irish people are the lost tribes of Israel. The Irish, okay. They're gone. They're in a vessel that there's no more identity there. They have disappeared. They have gone. They've melted into the world. But the Lord knows who they are, and the Lord knows where they are. All right, so that's the end of our class. Wow, that was great. We're two books behind already in our first class. We're behind Amos and Jonah. 2 books behind already. Wow, it's a lot. Okay, amen. Come on up here and introduce yourself to me, even though I know you. Come on up and shake my hand. Oh, Andrew, did you have anything? Homeworks? Okay.
Homework worksheet is not due for next week since we didn't cover the classes. So, free week.
Yeah, could you be reading and just be reading through and do the best you can and look at outlines and do some study and learn the material, okay? Like generally, like learning the material, like we're doing in class, And anything that comes to your mind, make a note of it and then talk. Talk to each other. Don't let the information just kind of go away, but just talk, ask questions and talk. And you could look at Bible Project's videos, Bible Project videos on Isaiah, Hosea, and just learn material, exposure to it, and talk about it. Because it'll be coming back through the rest of your life. Like you'll have that material as a reference. Okay? All right, you're dismissed. Come on up and shake my hand.